So it looks like this is the end of the game. I had a great time playing this one. As I mentioned at the beginning of the playthrough, I pretty much stumbled upon this game by accident. It caught my eye, looked interesting, and I decided to give it a shot. Looking back now, I'm really glad I did. At its core, Sunderfolk is a tabletop-inspired turn-based tactical game with a story that develops between the battles. The combat is definitely the main attraction here, and honestly, I think that's where the game shines the most. I ended up doing somewhere around 30 battles throughout the campaign, give or take a few. For me, that was pretty much the sweet spot. It never felt like the game dragged on or started throwing fights at me just to pad out the length. Instead, every battle felt like it had a purpose, because it was tied into what was happening in the story. One thing I really liked was the flexibility during the combat. Being able to choose which companion takes their turn rather than being locked into a fixed order gave a lot of freedom when planning. Same thing about using the weapons. I definitely enjoyed having that control, especially as the difficulty gradually increased. And then there are the fate cards. I absolutely love that system. They add just enough unpredictability to keep every fight interesting. Sometimes you have the perfect plan lined up, and a bad fate card suddenly changes everything. Other times a card appears at exactly the right moment and completely turns the tide in your favor. And I think the final battle showed that perfectly. I ended up winning it on my 4th attempt, and all 3 previous attempts were lost closer and closer to the end. Even on the winning run, things were extremely close. I still had my Bard and Arcanist available to take an action, but it really felt like I won by the narrowest of margins, and that made the victory incredibly satisfying. Even if I hadn't won on that 4th attempt, I am confident I would eventually get through it after a few more tries. And that's actually something I really appreciated about the game. I'm not a huge fan of endings that either completely shut you out unless you followed a perfect build path throughout the entire game, or endings that are so easy they feel no different than any other mission. And for me, Sunderfolk hit a really nice middle ground. As for the difficulty, outside of that final battle, I thought the game was challenging but fair. Playing on challenging difficulty, careful planning was usually rewarded, and rushing into things generally wasn't. And that's the kind of balance I do enjoy. Would I feel the same way about Shadowstone difficulty? Probably not. My guess is that on the highest difficulty, every character choice, trinket, weapon, card, and decisions would need to be managed under a microscope. Challenging felt like the right balance between difficulty and enjoyment for me. Story-wise, I wouldn't call it anything groundbreaking, but if there is one word that comes to mind, it's cute. It's a straightforward story, easy to follow, and never tries to take attention away from the combat. At the same time, It does a great job giving context and purpose to everything you are doing. I generally enjoy spending time in Orden between missions, talking to the townsfolk, learning about their backgrounds, and watching the town grow. There were a lot of characters that made me smile throughout the journey. Button Shrooms, for example, Mudmouth, Chirp, Track, and even the constantly apologetic Zihao all had plenty of memorable moments. The market and the workshop were probably the part I struggled with the most, as there are a lot of items, traits, and combinations to look through, and at times it felt a bit overwhelming. That said, the game does an excellent job letting you inspect abilities, effects, statuses, and mechanics whenever you need to. Once things started clicking, it became much easier to manage. I also got the impression that Sunderfolk was originally designed with co-op play in mind. Whether that was the developer's primary intention or not, I cannot say for sure. What I can say is that I had absolutely no problem playing it solo. Playing alone simply means controlling the entire party yourself, and honestly, it worked perfectly fine. So, if you've been wondering whether the game is worth playing single player, I'd say absolutely. From a technical standpoint, I don't remember running into any significant issues. If there were any bugs, they were minor enough that I don't even remember them. Visually, I think the game looks great. It's not trying to push graphical boundaries, but the art style fits the game perfectly. The friendly, colorful presentation works really well, and the interface manages to provide a lot of information without becoming overwhelming. The music is fairly simple, but I do want to give a lot of credit to the voice acting. The voice performances throughout the game were excellent and added a lot of personality to the characters. As for replayability, I think there is quite a bit here if you are interested in experimenting with different party compositions. Obviously, you'll already know the story, so some of the surprises won't land the same way a second time. But from a gameplay perspective, there is still a lot left to explore. Different heroes, different builds, different fate cards, different team sizes could easily create a very different experience. The game wasn't especially long, but it wasn't overly short either. It took me just under 30 hours to finish, which felt about right. If I had to score it, I'd probably land somewhere around an 8.5 or maybe even a 9 out of 10. The biggest negative for me was the movement system. Having character paths determined by mouse movement felt awkward at first, and even after getting used to it, I occasionally made mistakes because of it. Maybe it feels better on a controller, I honestly don't know, but I do believe there are places for improvements when using a mouse. The market and workshop would probably be my second complaint, not because they are bad, but because they felt a little overwhelming at times. Other than that though, I had a fantastic time with this game from start to finish. I never got bored, not once. And I'm really glad I found it, and I'm really glad I decided to do a full playthrough. If you played Sunderfolk yourself, let me know in the comments what your experience was like. What party did you use? Which characters ended up being your favorites? And if you enjoyed following along the playthrough, feel free to subscribe. It genuinely helps the channel and helps these videos reach more people. For those of you who already have, thank you very much for the support. But until next time, thank you for watching, stay safe, take care, and bye bye.